So let's just say somebody, let's just say me, let's say I've got that first draft and it's ready now. Where would somebody go and look to find, or who should they look for? What kind of skill set should they look for to get help with turning that into an actual book? And
Yeah.
where would they look?
Well, if you have, so if you have chosen to do it that way, to essentially create the content from your blogs, you're, if you like, beyond a book coach. So I work with people from the very get-go. So we would look at that, how that why, what, and how content, and create it for your book. So there's two ways you can do it. You can write a book and then you have years of content that you can then repurpose as a blog, or you can write your blogs and then you create the book. So if you have written blogs and you think that these can be collated into a book, then you would go to an editor. So you would go to a book editor. So there's actually many different types of editors, and they specialize in different things. So you want someone who specializes in books. If you've thought about the structure of this book, the why, what, and how structure, which is, a sort of tried and true kind of structure, it's unlikely that you'll need a lot of structural editing, but you might need some help with how to finalize the structure of the book. They might need to have a sort of what they call a manuscript appraisal, or a structural edit that gives you an idea of whether you're missing things, or whether you're repeating things, or whether there's whether the flow is making sense. Otherwise, you'll need what's called a copy edit, or I think there's a bunch of different terms, but let's call it a copy edit, which is really where the editor is going through and looking for the obvious things, the spelling and the grammar, but also sense. They'll look for sense, and they'll look for things that might need a further explanation, that kind of thing. So your first step, beyond my program and beyond if you've written the book yourself, is an editor.
Okay, that's useful, because there's so many different kinds of editors out there that you can jump online and you can do searches and stuff, but there's just truckloads of stuff to look at and wade through and try to decide what the next step is. So yeah, so if are there places where do you just have to just go and search for people online, or are there places that are like platforms where you can go and find an editor?
I have some editors that I've worked a lot with and that I recommend, but I think there is, for every possible occupation, down to facilities managers in apartment blocks, there is an association. So there is an editors association, and I can't think what it's called off the top of my head, but something along those lines. I think it's called the Society of Editors, but there's an editors association, so they will give you usually some insights as to how to find the people that you're looking for. And in my book Overnight Authority, I suggest some ways or some questions that you should ask your editor before you start to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That will give you a sense of whether or not they're they're the right person for you. Are you going to ask me what they are? Because
yes, please.
Okay. So you want them to really ask you about, for example, you would like an editor who is going to check out who your reader is. So you really hope that they ask you about your readership. When you're looking for a non-fiction editor, you want to look at somebody who is recommended as a non-fiction book editor. Presumably I'd look for them having testimonials on their website or on their LinkedIn. They ask you who your audience is for your book. They're going to give you a firm quote for doing the manuscript. It'll be based on actually looking at your manuscript though, who uses some kind of clear process and who can guide you through that process, but who'll tell you how the process works. If necessary, they'll start with a structural editor and then do a line by line edit. and who is always going to give you constructive responses and suggest solutions. You want someone who's a good communicator, who really listens to what you say. And you also want someone who doesn't take over your book, you know, who's leaving your voice in the writing. So those are some of the key qualities to look for in an editor.